Welcome to Fantasy Fanline.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fantasy Fanline, the only fantasy football call-in show putting you on the air with different industry experts every week. I am your host, Greg Scalera. It's a hard day today. For those of you who don't already know, you probably do know if you follow the show and if you're part of the fantasy football community. But we got some hard news today that Mike Tagliere, who is a beloved industry analyst in our community, passed away today after a long, difficult battle against COVID-19. The news just broke about an hour ago. We're all around the community kind of processing still. So today's not necessarily going to be a normal episode. We are dedicating today's show in memory of Mike Tagliere. We will take calls throughout the hour. I'll put our phone number up. It is 618-FANLINE. Sorry, I'm a little off my game today. Anyone who wants to call in and share memories of Tags, experiences that you've had with him as a fan or as an analyst over the years. I know he was one of the more responsive industry experts out there, and I, along with a lot of other fans and community members, have been following him for years, and regardless of your relationship with him, you probably felt like you knew him. We do have a special guest joining us today. He's not in the room with us yet. Zareh Kantzabedian. He is a base data analyst for PFF. He's a writer for Yards Per Fantasy and DynastyNerds, and he's a co-host of the What the Fantasy podcast, so he'll be joining us whenever he can. He was kind of a late substitution today into our show lineup. We had a guest lined up, and this is kind of a perfect story for today to kind of encapsulate the fantasy football community. We had a guest lined up who had to cancel on short notice today, kind of the last second. And, we had to spend the day kind of scrambling to find a last-minute substitution. And we got an outpouring of support from the community, as usual, because that is what this community is about. So thank you to everybody out there who tried to help hook us up with a guest at the last minute. Thank you to AJ from Shall We Football, good friend of the show, past guest, Michelle Majuk from Ball Blast Football, Aaron Larson from the Fantasy Footballers for giving us some visibility today and helping us get the word out that we needed a guest. Once again, Zareh will be joining us whenever he can. We grabbed him kind of at the last minute today, and I'm sure he's still getting ready to come on and join the show. So if anybody out there in the meantime would like to call in, again, we are at 618-FANLINE. We will answer your fantasy football questions. We'll talk with you live on the air. And, today is a day when we're going to spend some time to remember Mike Tagliere of Fantasy Pros, somebody near and dear to all of us who passed away earlier today, again, after a long, hard battle with COVID. We're thinking of him and his family and all of his colleagues and friends and his work family over at Fantasy Pros. They're some of the best people out there in this industry. I'm sure a lot of us owe our early days and our inspiration in the community to them and their inspiration. So with that being said, we're going to wait on Zareh to join us. He is not on the line with us yet. We're going to take some mailbag questions to start things off here. So one of our first mailbag questions, we have Oscar from New York who wrote in and asked if he should buy CEH low, referring to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I wouldn't do it, and we'll see what Zareh thinks once he joins the show and is able to weigh in. But I'm seeing more of the same from Clyde this year as I did last year. He is on a high-powered offense in Kansas City. It's going to score a lot of points. That's going to be appealing to a lot of people. But I just don't think that the offense runs through the ground game the way that it maybe did when Mahomes was newer to the league and still kind of learning the ropes and getting a feel for the offense. That offense runs through his arm and the passing attack and Travis Kelce and of course Tyreek Hill. So if you're betting on Clyde Edwards-Helaire to break out this year, I know he was kind of a popular off-season source of hype I wouldn't do it. I like him as a low RB2. He's always going to get a decent workload. He's always going to have an opportunity to score in the red zone. But I just don't think that the upside is there for that top tier RB1 breakout that people were probably hoping for when they came into the season. I know they certainly were hoping for it last year when he was drafted in the first round. A lot of people are remembering the Kareem Hunt days and Patrick Mahomes' first year as a starter. But once again, I don't think that that's the situation over there anymore. I don't see it happening for Clyde this year. We'll see. Next question from the mailbag from Jesse in Arizona. Is Derek Carr moving into quarterback one status? I think he's certainly moving in that direction. I don't know that I would call him a QB1 yet. I think it depends on your format. We discussed this on an earlier episode of our show. He's one of the only quarterbacks to have thrown for 4,000 plus yards for the past 3 years straight, 2018, 2019, 2020. So the yards have always been there. The touchdown trends have gone up over that course of time from 19 to 21 to 27. So far, he's thrown 4 this year in 2 games. So he's, on pace for 36 touchdowns and 7,000 plus yards with the extra game. But I don't really love to play the on pace game. But he's come out of the gate swinging this year, and if you believe in him, hope for more of the same. So I would still look at him as a kind of a high upside quarterback too. If you're going to rely on him week to week, I would love him as my super flex. And I think that there's probably a world where if he is your quarterback two in a 1 quarterback league, if you're rostering 2 for whatever reason, and you have a big name guy that you're looking to sell high and fill another need. I think that's an option. I think in that case, you could probably rely on him to produce for you every week. So let's move on to the next mailbag question. Keeping it with the quarterbacks, is it worth stashing Trey Lance right now? From Sam in New Jersey. I'm looking forward to getting Zareh's opinion on this when he joins us. But again, it depends on your format. I think he is worth a stash as your QB3 in a super flex. Where the quarterback position is more valuable and not as easily replaced. I maybe in a single quarterback league, again, if you don't have a stud quarterback, if you drafted like a Ryan Tannehill and you have some question marks, I would hang on to him with the hope that maybe he takes the job in San Francisco and is able to supplant Tannehill or maybe one of those other lower streamer guys like a Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones. Then I would probably still hang on to him. If you have a deep enough bench, Trey Lance, keep him around, see if he pops. But right now, Jimmy G's looking okay. He hasn't given them a reason to bench him. He's, won his first 2 games, and that's what Jimmy G does. What has he thrown? He's got 2 touchdowns so far. Yeah, he's averaging about 250 yards per game with no interceptions. So, he looks like Jimmy G. He's winning games. He's not making mistakes, not turning the ball over. I don't see Trey Lance coming out and taking the job sooner than later, like some people were probably expecting. I know a lot of people came into the year kind of stashing him and Justin Fields as those sort of lottery tickets at the quarterback position. So, if you grabbed Fields, you're in luck this week. I think he's the guy moving forward. I am a Bears fan, so I might be a little bit biased. But I think you can roll with Fields out of the gate. Trey Lance is more of a long-term investment at this point, more of a lottery ticket. I would not sacrifice a valuable roster spot for him unless you have the luxury to do that in a deep bench situation or a super flex league. So, moving on to our next mailbag question. We have Joe Mixon or Zeke for the rest of the season from Andy in Delaware. I think a lot of people are probably viewing them very similarly to each other right now. I know I certainly am. I liked Zeke coming into the season because of the offense. I still think he's great. I still think his offense is great. They're going to score a ton of points. I think that I underestimated Tony Pollard's talent and involvement in this offense. I would give the edge in this situation, I think, to Joe Mixon, just for the sake of his workload and the lack of competition there. The offense is looking better than I was fearing coming into the season with all the kind of the bad vibes coming out of the Bengals offseason camp between the drops from the receivers and the quarterback not looking healthy. But I think that offense is going to move the ball and score points. I think they're going to have to with a shaky defense. They're both low running back ones for me without the kind of top tier upside. Mixon has the workload. Zeke has the potent offense. I kind of wish I could combine them and get the best of both worlds, but you can't. So if you have to pick one or the other, I'm giving the edge to Mixon. I think Zeke still has the bigger name. So if you're looking at a trade situation, you might, if you're trying to sell Zeke, you might be able to get Mixon plus something if you're really dealing with somebody who's not bought in on Mixon as a running back one. I happen to be, and I think a lot of people are coming around on that. A lot of people are still remembering his disappearing act a couple of years ago where he was getting that constant, steady workload, but it wasn't translating to fantasy production. He was getting, 20, 25 carries a game and somehow still disappearing from stat sheets. So if people are still feeling burned by that and remembering that as a possibility for this year, go see if you could buy Joe Mixon low. I don't think that that's the world that we're in anymore. I think that Mixon is a stud, and I think he's going to outproduce Zeke on the year. So good question. Not a huge difference for me, but give the edge to Mixon. So once again, our phone line is open, 618 Fanline. You can call in anytime during the show to ask questions, share memories of Mike Tagliere, who we are dedicating today's episode to. If anybody wants to call in, talk about their experience listening to him on the Fantasy Pros or reading his articles. No, he's helped a lot of people. He has helped me over the years. I didn't have a, direct personal relationship with him, but there were times that I wrote to him as an aspiring, industry expert. Oh, Zareh is on his way in. I'm going to bring him in here. What's going on, buddy?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, man. I'm so sorry. I thought I read Pacific Standard Time. I'm so sorry.
Time zones are the worst. It's okay, man. Welcome in.
Gosh.
I'm glad to have you at all. You are doing us a huge favor coming into the show. I was just explaining to the listeners that you kind of pinch hit for us last second today. We had somebody previously scheduled who had to cancel due to an emergency. And it's kind of a testament, again, to our fantasy football community of wonderfully supportive people who came together. And I know AJ from Shall We Football tried to put us in touch shortly after we got in touch ourselves, which is funny. And I know you've been on with those guys in the past. So really just, again, a testament to our community that we were able to figure this out today and get somebody on the show. Welcome in, man. Glad to have you.
Pleasure to meet you, man. Yeah, AJ told us about you right after we wrapped up the show with him last Wednesday, and I'm glad to be on. Thank you for thinking of me and considering of me. I wasn't really planning on doing anything today, so this is perfect, man. I appreciate this.
Yeah, why aren't you, out living it up today on a Saturday afternoon, man? What's going on?
So many errands. The man has got me down during the week. He's just like, will not let me live my life. So I'm like, all right, Saturday, I've got all these things. I already knocked out a bunch of stuff in the house. I just finished sweeping the front porch. Ready to get into some fantasy football, though, man. I'm ready to switch it up, switch gears, and get into some fantasy football.
Well, for the sake of our show, I'm glad you were free, man. I was talking with the listeners a little bit before you came on about how today is a tough day for the community. We lost Mike Tagliere, Fantasy Pros, and he is one of those guys who, even if you didn't know him, didn't have a personal relationship with him, you felt like you did because he was so accessible and personable. You felt like his door was open. He was one of the bigger guys that you could reach out and touch when you were kind of trying to get your foot in the door of the industry. Speaking as somebody who was just in that position earlier this year, he was always responsive, always supportive. I had several conversations with him. He was encouraging. He was enthusiastic about the format. And just, he was one of those guys who if I had a first impression with him where he said, you know what, it's not the time to get in this industry. It's not a good idea. Don't do it. I probably wouldn't have done it, but he didn't say that. So here we are. And that's the kind of difference that somebody like that can make,
Mike was definitely one of the people that truly inspired me. And he was one of the people I really looked up to. I loved his work, and I loved the little glimpses he gave us into his family as a father, as a husband. You could tell he was one of the more well-temperamental people on here too. He never got involved in little tiffs that people had in the fantasy community. He always had a sure head, and he always wrote great articles. I'm really going to miss him. I did not expect this. I don't know why I took it for granted that, he's going to be okay. He's going to come out of this. But, unfortunately.
We've all been pulling for him. For anyone who wasn't kind of following his issues over the last couple months, he's been sick for a long time through most of the summer. I remember finding out about it think early summer, I was on vacation, and like you, I was like, he's a young, healthy guy as far as I know. I don't know him well
He's
enough
my
to
age.
presume
We're both 39 years
yeah.
old. Yeah.
And I don't want to get into vaccinations or anything, but he was vaccinated. It was just one of those freak things where bad things happen to good people, and it's hard to see, man. It's tough day for the community, for his wife, his kids, all of his coworkers over at Fantasy Pros, Kyle and Dan and all those people. Just the salt of the earth. Some of my favorite people in our community. And I'm thinking of them today. I know that they're passing around some kind of fundraiser. I'm going to bring up the details on that in a little bit and share it here just to get some extra visibility on it. Not that they need, visibility from an up-and-coming call-in show to give them a boost. They're kind of the biggest names in the industry, but, we do what we can here. So, Zareh, welcome to the show, man. Zareh Kantzabedian, how did I do there?
Perfectly. Gosh, are you Armenian? Because it says Scalera, so I'm assuming you're Italian, but it sounds like you're Armenian.
I am Italian. I'm not going to lie, man. I'm not going to say that I've watched your show before. I'm a fan of What the Fantasy. I've heard you say your name, so I knew the vibe of it, but I'm not going to say that I did play it back in slow speed today to practice it, but I'm also not going to say I didn't do that. So welcome to the show, man. If you want to take a minute to properly kind of introduce yourself and plug your projects, your podcast, the places that you write for, all wonderful brands that I'm a fan of.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. I started out with a Pro Football Focus as a base data analyst, which essentially means you're a play charter, which is something that I love to do. I started.
Thank you for translating that to layman, by the way.
Yeah, you're just charting what's happening on the offensive side of the ball. You're just charting everything from drop back depth to ball location, everything, every little thing. And that's a play-by-play thing. I was doing it for the NCAA for college games on Saturdays. I also got Alex Johnson at Yards Per Fantasy. He gave me my first writing opportunity at Yards Per Fantasy, and I'm forever grateful for him for that. I also do some Devy stuff at DynastyNerds, and I'm taking a hiatus from all the stuff I just mentioned because I'm working on my own project right now called Running Back versus Game Script, which is essentially a contextual look at how running backs perform under different game script scenarios. So we get a better sense of how coaches are utilizing them, what to expect, especially like before we're going into the weekends for fantasy football. We get to look at lines for certain games and say, okay, well, looking at the report that I created, how is he utilized in certain game script scenarios? How is he utilized when a team was down in the first half as opposed to when they were down in the second half? How much time does he see in snaps when they were down, different score sequences, down 3, down 7, down 14, up, it shows how they're being utilized on a per down basis in different score sequence scenarios. So that is
such a good idea, man. I can't believe that doesn't already exist. What a useful, helpful resource. And just to kind of apply that to a use case, I mean, that's something that you as a fantasy player are going to sit down with and make a projection based on, how you expect the game to go. What's the game flow going to look like? Is this team going to be down by the second half? And if so, is their running back going to disappear? So what can I expect from him based on that projection? I love that, man. I feel like you hear that kind of game script analysis tossed around a lot without the actual numbers to back it up. So what a good idea, man. I wish you all the best with it. I'm happy to help share it when the time comes. When are you looking to start getting that out?
I published 4 articles. I think I'm up to 4 articles already. I did one on Kenneth Gainwell in week 1, Antonio Gibson week 2,
you did.
Leonard Fournette week 1, and who was I forgot my third one, my fourth one. I was supposed to do Jonathan Taylor and Michael Carr this week, but I have family coming to town. And like I said, the man has me down. I'm working 10 hours. So it was really hard to squeeze it in between the, wee evening hours when I was just completely exhausted between family and work. But I'll be getting back to it next week.
I get it, man. I know you and your co-host over at What the Fantasy are big Kenny Gainwell guys. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I can't tell how much of it is legit and how much of it at this point is just rolling with the gimmick.
Well, Kenny Gainwell is an interesting prospect. I think first and foremost, and Nick Sirianni is very happy to have him on the Eagles. Yeah. As much as I want to see him utilized, as much as I want to see him utilized as a primary early down back, I don't think that's really necessarily in his range of outcomes. However, we have seen him utilized in early game script scenarios where they have been in neutral game scripts where they haven't been necessarily down or up too much. He is their primary pass catching down back. And I believe this stat is correct. Coming into this year, out of all the rookie running backs that got drafted, he was the highest targeted running back in this entire running back draft class. So he was used quite often at Memphis as a receiver split out wide. He was used as a primary early down runner. I believe he was starting ahead of Antonio Gibson before Antonio Gibson got drafted.
Wow.
So he is about under 6 feet. He's 5'10", 5'11", 200 pounds. Not the dimensions you want necessarily for an early down running back, but serviceable in that role within a shared workload. So he's getting anywhere between like 6 to 7 attempts, and he's getting maybe about like 5 to 6 targets on that's a normal game script scenario for him. When they go down, expect to see him a lot more on the field. If I had the numbers up, if I had the article up, I would know exactly how to cite it. But his utilization goes up significantly when they're down. So this weekend against the Cowboys, Eagles secondary isn't the best. So if you're doing some DFS and you get Kenny Gainwell on the cheap, maybe the DFS industry isn't too hot on him yet. If they still have him cheap and you can squeeze him in for sure.
That's such a good call. There you go, folks. Sneak preview of the running back versus game script. Where can they find that full series?
On my Twitter page at ZKantzFF. I haven't created a website yet, which I'm planning to do, where you can find all the articles. But if you want to find anything, just go ZKantzFF in your search bar, running back versus game script, and then you can just type in the player you want, and you'll find the article.
There you go. He's a great follow. If you don't follow him already, don't miss out. And I love the Kenny Gainwell visibility, the attention. I think that he's going a little bit underappreciated right now just because of the situation that he was drafted in. I feel like people don't really fully understand his skill set, but I think they will over the course of this year. So speaking of guys with pass-catching chops from college who aren't necessarily getting to show it off much this year, we got a mailbag question that I touched on a little bit, but I want to circle back to get your opinion because I'm hearing it a lot, especially today. I think he might have been trending at some point. We have Oscar from New York who wanted to know if he should buy Clyde Edwards-Helaire low at this point. What do you think?
Yeah, what's low though, right? Like, are
exactly.
you gonna are you giving James Robinson for CEH? Because I'm probably okay with that. I'm okay with CEH for James Robinson.
Yeah.
CH is he's in a predicament right now, but we all know the swings of fantasy football. Like 1 week, it could be like one day. Like the value in a player could change significantly on a player. I think if you listen to enough fantasy football podcasts, you hear fantasy analysts say the same thing about CEH. CEH at LSU was a really good pass catcher. Chiefs took him in the first round. With that aggressive tactic of taking CEH in the first round, Pat Mahomes saying, "Let's get him. I want him." You'd expect the Chiefs to use him in that primary pass catching role, but we're seeing that I don't know. It's kind of like hindsight is 2020. When you see a running back on a team who isn't who isn't known for his running abilities on a team with Patrick Mahomes, you start to see you're like, oh yeah, it's Patrick Mahomes. They don't necessarily need to run the ball. Right. You see it at the goal line a lot. They do a lot of jet sweeps. They do a lot of tosses to Travis Kelce and jet sweeps to Tyreek Hill. They'll use him, but I mean, I think they're only going to use him on a matchup. It's matchup dependent based on the defensive line they're playing. So I did before I started running back versus game script. I did a few game film reviews on CEH, and what you notice is when they're playing stout run defenses, not part of the game plan at all. When they're playing, weak run defenses, you'll see his runs, you'll see his rushes go up. But he's very matchup dependent. If you, like I said, if you can get James Robinson. Long story short, if you can get it for somebody like James Robinson, I'm okay with that. It depends what you want to give. I don't know who's out there. Who can you think of that would be a solid offer for CEH right now?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about a 1-for-1, but maybe like a Chase Edmonds plus, a lower kind of wide receiver 3 flex.
Yeah,
Chase is showing up okay.
I think I'd hold Chase for now over C. I mean, it's CEH is dirt cheap right now, but I think I'd hold Chase above. I think I have Chase above CEH. I don't do rankings, but in my head, in my head,
It's funny for me because they're close range wise for me, but they're so different player wise and outcome wise. I feel like I like Clyde because of he still has a floor. I don't think that the consistent upside is really there, but he's going to get a decent enough regular workload and a good enough offense that he's never really completely going to disappear. I don't know if I could say that for Chase Edmonds, but I feel like his ceiling is much more attractive to me on that high-powered Cardinals offense as their pass-catching running back.
Yes.
We haven't really seen the Cardinals tested yet in a situation where they need to go, full shootout. But I feel like when they do, Chase Edmonds is going to be the benefactor of that. And James Conner does not look great. So, and we know his injury history, James Conner. Yeah. So there's a world where Chase Edmonds is the guy at some point this season. Even then, I mean, if James Conner goes down, I don't know that they don't bring somebody else in, but it's not going to be anybody scarier than James Conner as far as. Go ahead.
As far as looking at, I'm looking at CEH's rush attempts right now in the first 2 weeks of the season, and against Cleveland, not the strongest run defense, but they're considerable. He had 14 attempts. In week 2 against Baltimore, he had 13 attempts, which is great, but he's just not getting the production. He's not getting the yards. He's not getting he didn't get 0 targets in week 2. He got 3 targets in week 3. Caught all 3 of his targets for 29 yards. They got to incorporate more in that. I'm so okay with getting CEH on a low price because this is the bottom. This is the bottom. He had a fumble. Everybody is just freaking out on him. This is as low as you can get him. So I don't think it would take much to just get grease the gears for a CEH trade right now. He got 13 attempts against Baltimore, which is surprising considering that they're one of the stronger run defenses. If he just got some more targets and receptions, he would have had like a solid low RB2 day.
Yep. Yeah, I said earlier that I think a lot of people are still remembering the days of Kareem Hunt and hoping, to get Clyde there. Yeah. But I don't think that's the offense anymore there, and I don't think that's Patrick Mahomes anymore. I don't think he needs to lean on the run game the way that he did when he was newer to the system, learning the ropes. That offense is about his arm, Patrick Mahomes' arm, and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. And that was the same argument I had in the offseason for people who were high on McCall Hardman. I just don't think that there's ever been room for a tertiary weapon there as a pass catcher, and I don't think that we're ever going to see the days. I don't want to say ever, but in the near future, I don't think we're going to see the days of a stud running back again. So, just to remind everybody, our phone line is open, 618 Fanline. I apologize that our show is a little bit of a mess today. It is usually organized, and we'll have Zareh back later in the season on purpose this time when things are a little smoother and the community is not in collective mourning. But
we're doing this for you, Tags. We're doing this because you got us here. You inspired me and Greg and I both to be here. So I mean, without him. There's so many people in this community that would not be where they are in the community if it wasn't for him. His work inspired us because he was as legit as they come. And, when we saw his work, when I saw his work, I was like, okay, this is what I need to base my work off of. This kind of process is how I need to base my work off. And the temperament too of him as a figure in the fantasy industry. He's always a well-intentioned person, sweet guy, good-hearted person. It's a blow, man. But I'm through all this stuff that we're doing right now, through taking, doing fantasy analysis, we do this to honor him. We do this to honor him, and that's what I couldn't believe when I heard it this morning. Stuff like that. Anyways, I don't know, man.
It still doesn't, feel real. He's certainly somebody who I spent many years listening to, 3, 4, 5 times a week. And it's hard when that presence is suddenly just gone. Even if they're not somebody who you, like I said, if you weren't friends or had a personal relationship with, you still felt like he was in your life and he was a constant. And, the Fantasy Pros brand and everything they do over there has been such a driving, innovative force in the industry. They have some of the best tools there are, some of the best shows on the market. And I always felt like Tags was the engine that gave it legitimacy and made it feel right and made it feel like it was worth spending that much time consuming a hobby and playing a game, because fantasy football on its face, to somebody from the outside, maybe feels like a silly game and is hard to understand how we can spend so much time, playing it. And I told my wife once, she's great and she's super supportive of, this hobby and this industry and the things that I'm doing to get involved in it. But I remember one of my first years playing, I really nailed a mock draft and I was feeling great about it. And she walked in and I'm like celebrating. She's like, what, what's going on? And I said, oh, I just totally nailed a mock draft. I got so-and-so. And she was like, oh, great. Congrats on your fake draft. And I was like, oh, it's when you put it that way, it really puts it into perspective. It was a fake draft about a fake game based on a real sport, but it's not that on its surface. When you go deeper, it is really about connecting with people and community and staying involved with your friends. I know a lot of us started playing when we were younger, and maybe it got harder as we got older and people moved away geographically and got busy with jobs and marriages and even back, college careers and things like that. Fantasy for me has always been a constant between me and my friends to keep us connected. Even if we're not seeing each other all the time, I do feel like we spend time together during the fantasy season, talking trades and talking smack and things. And Mike was a big part of that experience in my life, and I'm sure for a lot of other people. So if anybody wants to, drop a comment or call in and chat with us and share your memories or your experiences with tags or any other questions about fantasy, we are here to talk and here to answer your questions and relive your experiences with you. In the meantime, we have a mailbag question that came in from Sal in California. He says, I drafted Ryan Tannehill and am regretting it. Fair. So should I stream Daniel Jones or Teddy over him this week? Ugh. So Daniel Jones and the Giants are against Atlanta. Teddy and the Broncos are against the Jets. Tannehill's against the Colts this week. How would you sort of rank those three?
I will take Daniel Jones above all of them.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's the order I just read them in is probably the order that I would put them in. I would do Daniel Jones, Teddy Bridgewater, Ryan Tannehill. I think Tannehill gets it on track at some point this year, but I don't know if it's this week against the Colts. They've just been so efficient. The Titans offense over the past couple of years, their fantasy productivity has relied so much on efficiency in the passing game set up by success in the run game. And that's typically not a sticky stat, not necessarily something that you can rely on to continue, but it continued last year just like it did the year before. And I think that's when people really bought in and said, okay, Tannehill has the potential to be one of those kind of top 8 quarterbacks. With Julio coming to town, it should have only gotten better in theory, but we've seen stranger things. Odell Beckham going to Cleveland and the Browns, not necessarily getting better in the pass game. I don't think that continues. I think that they kind of land in a happy medium at some point, maybe less unbelievably efficient than last year, but not what we've seen over the first 2 weeks. How do you feel about the Tennessee pass game right now?
I think it's slowly coming together. We kind of saw some life last week against the Seahawks, but that was only once the run game started going. So Derrick Henry, activated. He went Super Saiyan. If you watch Dragon Ball Z, and he got
religiously.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. I watched it a lot. And so, once that running game came to life, which I feel like it's going to persist this week and at Indianapolis, they're going to rely back on it. I think they're going to come back to their essence, their fundamentals of the Derrick Henry run game. Tannehill is a good play this week. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be such a high-scoring game. I think he's a solid start. He can probably get you like a solid QB1 performance, but Daniel Jones has a rushing upside, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it come to fruition in the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, he's the RB1 in New York right now, possibly of all the New York teams, including the Bills.
Yes, he is exactly, and I think the game just complements more of a shootout, more high scoring affair between the Falcons. Falcons defense is god awful. Jalen Hurts put up he had over 30 fantasy points against them in week 1, and that's with a team. That's in a week where Jalen Hurts really didn't do that much damage on the ground as a rusher. He got his points, he got his work as a rusher, but he didn't do that much damage. Daniel Jones' floor is there as a rusher. And I think he's still being slept on in the fantasy season. I think come next week, people are going to be talking about him more as they soon come to realize, hey, this is going to be one of the guys that's going to help you get to a fantasy season. As bad of a taste that's going to leave in your mouth, that's going to be a reality that we're going to have to start dealing with. And I'm looking at him on my fantasy waiver wire. He's still there, and I'm just like, I got to put him somewhere. But I think Daniel Jones is going to be the better play above all these. And Teddy's kind of like a low floor QB2 in a super flex league.
Yeah, I think this is probably your last week to get Daniel Jones for cheap off the waivers. I wouldn't wait past this week if you're in a situation where you're uncertain with your quarterback and looking to make a move or just add some depth. Go get him because he's about to blow up. The Atlanta Falcons have that effect. They look bad, the Falcons, on both sides of the ball this year, like surprisingly bad. And I guess there's a world where the Giants blow them out and lean on the run game, but I don't expect that. So. Mm-hmm. Let me throw one more name into that mix. How do you feel about Kirk Cousins against Seattle? Do you put him? Yeah. Do you think more so than these guys, because he is another one of those guys who's kind of widely available on waivers right now, maybe in that streaming mix with the other names?
I like Kirk just behind Daniel Jones.
Okay.
I like him. Yeah, just again, because, and it comes really back down to the rushing upside. That's your floor right there. Again, like going back to Jalen Hurts, he didn't throw a single passing touchdown last week. He amassed all of his rushing basically on one final drive in the fourth quarter, towards the end of the fourth quarter, where they were just playing prevent, and he just ran basically up the field from their own side of the field to the goal line, and he got a rushing touchdown, and he got 22, 23 fantasy points, 21, I don't know, something like that. But I mean, that's your rushing. You want that rushing floor integrated into your starting quarterback. And Daniel Jones, we're seeing that with him in the first 2 weeks of the season, accompanied along with a high scoring game. Daniel Jones is going to have some solid rushing along with a couple passing touchdowns, so, and what should be a high scoring affair, again, some passing yardage. Kirk Cousins is in a game where they're supposed to score like 50 something points. And that's high. If you're looking at Vegas totals, anything above 50 points is something you want your players involved in. Like the Bucs-Rams game, that's going to be one of the higher scoring games. They're going against the Seahawks and Russell Wilson in that new offense where Shane Waldron is the offensive coordinator. They're just throwing it now. So I mean, like
he's gonna make the Vikings keep up.
Yeah, he is. And he had 32 pass attempts. He had 22 completions last week for 244 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I mean, that was another high scoring game. So you can expect something similar to that. I don't know how many fantasy points that is, but I mean, you can expect something similar to that.
It's enough to warrant a stream, I think, certainly over Ryan Tannehill this week. So, yeah, good insight. I like it.
Especially if Dalvin Cook doesn't go.
I was gonna bring that up. I don't know what the last that we've heard of his injury was. I think he was not at practice on Friday. Let me double check that. I do have a news section. Yeah, Dalvin Cook ankle not seen at Friday's practice. So if he doesn't go, how much waiver are you burning on Alexander Madison? He doesn't have Mike Boone behind him there anymore. I know it was kind of a committee at times when we lost Dalvin Cook in years past, but I don't think they have the depth for that anymore.
I'm an Alexander Madison stan. I loved him coming out of Boise. I think he deserves more recognition. I mean, he had a bad game against Atlanta last week, and then week 17 he kind of went off. I think he's a very great running back. He's a running back too. Don't go overboard with him. He's a running back too for now. We don't know how Mike Zimmer will. I remember the famous Mike Boone game of week 16 against the Packers 2 years ago, because I started Mike Boone. I was like, oh man, it's Mike Boone's time.
Me too.
Dalvin Cook can't go. I started him, and Mike Boone, like, once he didn't perform, he was taken out of the game quick. And Amir Abdullah, it was all Amir Abdullah for the second half of the game. So that was heartbreaking to watch. So It's not that I don't trust Madison so much as that I don't trust Zimmer. So we just don't know yet how Madison's kind of like an emergency break case of break glass case of emergency kind of back. If you don't really have a solid option, if you have like Elijah Mitchell or something like that, or if you have like Michael Carter in like a deeper league, start Madison. But if you got Miles Sanders, go Miles Sanders over Madison. I think keep those guys in play.
It's an important distinction that Madison is not going to step in and be Dalvin Cook. But, even if he comes in and he's 75% of Dalvin Cook, that's still a great start, especially if you're picking him up off waivers. Yes. I would imagine he's pretty widely rostered, but maybe not in some of those more shallow leagues. I lived and died by the Mike Boone sword on that game. I believe it booted me from playoff contention that year. So I will never forget it. But he's not there anymore. So as far as I know, it's the Alexander Madison show. And we'll see what happens. Dalvin Cook has been a monster the first couple of weeks. We'll see how much of that translates to Madison.
Right.
So we don't have any callers or additional questions that I haven't covered while I was waiting for you, I don't think. I'm going to read a couple of comments that came in from Reddit when I posted kind of what show we were doing today and that we were thinking of tags and kind of taking some time to remember him on the podcast. We have somebody who wrote, RIP Tags. I'm sure you were humbled by the outpouring of love from the fantasy community. Yeah, if you go on fantasy Twitter right now, and I'm sure for the foreseeable future, people are going to be sharing their memories and their affection for Tags for a long time. Somebody else said if there's ever a fantasy football Hall of Fame, we need a memorial of Tags in there for all he's done for the fantasy community. Rest in power. Yeah, he's like I said, man, I think that if you asked a lot of people around our industry and a lot of even more casual fans of the game, Tags is probably on that Mount Rushmore of analysts or certainly shows. You know, his Fantasy Pros podcast is probably on everybody's short list, top 3, top 4. I would love to see a Tags memorial. That would be a glorious statue in the Fantasy Football Hall of Fame that maybe someday we'll put up in Canton.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're trying to get into the fantasy industry, you know, just know that like it was because of Tags, you know, that a lot of us got to do what we get to do right now. I mean, he was always a big inspiration for us, and you know.
Yep.
It's good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's not gonna be easy to. It's gonna be hard to move on from this because he was one of the guys I never spoke to him once, but I always felt connected to the guy. It was just I always appreciated everything about him. Everything, like literally everything. Like I don't know him personally as a person. I never spoke to him. I never met him, but like everything that I saw from him, I appreciated about him wholeheartedly. So it definitely hurts.
I was lucky enough to talk to him a couple of times as a fan, and then later on, you know, kind of as I was entering the industry as a host here on the show. And I will say that to anyone out there looking to break into the industry and maybe start creating content or start your own podcast or write a column, if you're looking for a model of behavior to follow and work ethic and value to the community, I hope that you were lucky enough to follow Tags while he was here, being that model for us and then for you. Just couldn't have been a nicer guy in any of my interactions with him and any interactions I've ever seen between him and whether it was his peers or mentoring new people to come into the industry. If you're wondering how to become beloved by a community of people that you probably never met in person, check out the Mike Tagliere story because he had it figured out, man. He was great at what he did. Salt of the earth person. And, yeah, I mean, you know, it's a hard thing to talk about for an hour here. I'm really trying to refocus on it.
Just know that if you're rostering Najee Harris this year, Mike was one of the biggest Najee Harris guys that was his guy. So you got a piece of Mike Tagliere on your roster this year. So
yeah, you know, and he got me in early on the Mike Williams bandwagon too for this year, and I'm so grateful that he did because
when you heard Mike. Yeah, when you heard Mike love one of your guys, you're like, okay, good. If you had any kind of hesitancy, you're like, God, should I take this guy in the second round? And you're like, no, Mike's like, no, I love Najee Harris this year. I'm taking Najee Harris. I'm like, all right, I'm taking Najee Harris. Mike Williams too. We're like, we're gonna do this again. We're gonna do this again with Mike Williams, and you hear Mike saying, no, dude, Mike Williams, let's go, fire it up, all systems go. You're like, all right, let's go, Mike Williams.
There are guys that he beat the drum for in years past, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I didn't agree with the take until he explained it. And then I was like, that makes perfect sense. He made it all make sense for me. And he was usually right. And Mike Williams, so far so good. He's somebody who, Tags talked about in the offseason about the change in his situation with the new offensive coordinator over there. He's going to be used differently. There's not much you could do about the health concerns. But as far as his role in the offense, those are the kinds of differences you look for coming into the season. You try to stay away from, superfluous things like revenge game narratives and things like that. And you look at changes in role and changes in personnel and coaching staff and how they affect the usage of a player. And, Mike Williams was always a low target guy who made big plays. He was boom or bust, got hurt a lot. Now he's starting to see, more targets than he ever has in years past. He's kind of morphing into that actual reliable wide receiver too, and still kind of retaining that upside talent that he had on those bigger plays. So, Thank you, tags.
Yeah, and it's only week 2. I don't think we've seen like what Mike Williams is going to do yet. I think we're still kind of like all like jury-eyed coming out of the offseason, and we're just like not fully awake yet. Our eyes aren't completely open to what Mike Williams is going to do, to what a lot of players are going to do in the league. And Mike was a big part of that. Mike was one of the big, banner. He was the big Mike Williams banner holders going into the regular season. And
and I think not just because they shared a first name. There was definitely a very exclusive Mike club, and they were
there
both
was no
part
name
of
bias.
it. But I don't think he was biased. But if for anyone listening out there wondering, is Mike Williams legit? Is he the real deal? Should I sell him high while I can? I wouldn't do it, man. I think he's gonna keep making you happy this year. I think he's the real deal. And
well, this is the final year of his contract on the Chargers, correct?
Yeah.
So
right.
I'm assuming he's going to cash in on that and go somewhere, man. And it's going to be
for
interesting.
his sake.
Yeah, and Josh Palmer's sake.
So speaking of news and things like that, I'm going to discuss some recent news from this past week, and we'll kind of break it down. I usually have this queued up into nice, neat banners, but I created this showroom about 20 minutes before we started because I didn't know who was going to be our guest today, so I couldn't fill in any of the information yet. So let's take a look at some news. Diontae Johnson is ruled out with a knee injury for Week 3 against the Bengals. What does this mean for you? Are you giving a bump to any other receivers on that team? Is Juju going to kind of see the majority of those targets with Diontae Johnson out?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. I mean, that offensive line can't protect Ben long enough to deliver passes efficiently to Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool had some opportunities last week, but we'll see. We'll see if he comes down with a few more catches. Juju Smith-Schuster is the safe guy you want here. James Washington will slot into the same role that Diontae Johnson, but he's not going to execute nearly as efficiently as Diontae Johnson did as a wide receiver. So Smith-Schuster is the guy you want here.
I'm seeing a lot of debate out there right now in the community of Big Ben looks washed versus his offensive line isn't protecting him, and meanwhile I'm kind of standing in the middle like, ¿Por qué no los dos? Like it is both of those things are both of those things are happening right now. He looks terrible and the line looks terrible. And Juju has, in recent years, been that kind of high target but low value target kind of guy. I think he had close to like 1,000 catches last year, but something like 800 yards. I mean, which is crazy. So he's going to get a ton of catches in those kind of PPR formats. I think he's worth maybe a low wide receiver 2 this week in full PPR if you have to. But I certainly wouldn't hesitate to play him in a flex this week with Diontae out. That's a lot of targets to go around.
Is it crazy to say that the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line is worse than it was last year?
No.
It looks
I don't think
worse.
that's crazy, man. On paper they made moves to fix it, but that doesn't mean that it worked, and I don't think it did. So
dude, as soon as that ball is snapped and is in Ben's hands, his offensive linemen are in his lap, like especially the right side. Like last week against the Raiders, it was that right side that his right guard was just like right here, man. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there was a time where Ben in his career physically had the tools to succeed despite that sort of challenge, and I don't think he's there anymore. He's not going to be flushing out of the pocket and making plays with his legs anymore. That's just not the kind of guy he is.
If I may offer a hypothesis, though, of what I see, what I'm expecting, what I'm hoping for a personnel play. Okay, Diontae Johnson's not on the field. James Washington is not efficient as Diontae Johnson as a receiver. Diontae Johnson is so much better. James Washington is okay. If you want to protect Ben tomorrow, and you don't want to force these 3 wide receiver sets that are going to be completely inefficient with James Washington on the field, let's see more of Pat Freiermuth and Eric Ebron on the field in 2 tight end sets with just Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster. Freiermuth saw some production last week. He outproduced Eric Ebron. There's a lot of discussion about Pat Freiermuth becoming the new tight end, and he's already overtaken Eric Ebron this year already. And he looked really good in the preseason. He looked faster than I can recall him looking at
faster than I was expecting.
Yeah. So let's hope that we see let's hope we see some more of those 12-man personnel sets. And Pat Freiermuth might be a sneaky play in DFS tomorrow as somebody who might get a solid target share, who might get some touchdowns. Ben Roethlisberger saw him, threw a couple touchdowns to him in the red zone, threw a couple touchdowns to him in preseason, in this year's preseason. So maybe that comes on. Maybe that continues. So let's keep an eye out for that. I think that's something that's going to happen.
Yeah, there's a tier of inexpensive tight ends in DFS where you're kind of just hoping for a touchdown, and I think that this week Freiermuth's probably got better odds to be one of those guys who falls into the end zone than not. So
yeah,
I think that's a great call. Just keeping an eye on some more comments coming in here on Reddit about tags, and I want to call out Josh Tree here, who says, "Thanks tags for all the great reading material. I spent many a bathroom break with you."
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it's good for sometimes, man.
What was the well, I forgot the name of the article you used to write every single week. The huge
the primer.
The primer, man.
Yeah,
that was
primer.
that was one of my go-to articles every single week.
Bathroom break gold. If I could print that out and put it in the like the magazine holder next to the toilet, that's where it would live.
The primer was insane. I was always in awe at how he wrote that, like every single week. And it wasn't just like he would put so much statistical analysis in there too. Like he would look at matchups, historical data, like what they've been doing, what they have done.
Yeah, he was one of those guys who, even if you didn't agree with his take, you never doubted that he knew what he was talking about.
His process was sound.
Did the work, sound process. Yep. Moving on to another piece of news here. Christian McCaffrey expected to miss a few weeks with a hamstring injury. Could have been worse. I think managers are probably breathing a sigh of relief that he's not going on IR. But Chuba Hubbard, man, is he the guy? And what are you spending? Are you breaking the bank to get him?
Sure, why not? Yeah. I mean, if you didn't blow it all on Elijah Mitchell in week 1, did you have anything left for? Yeah. I think Chuba Hubbard is a good play. Chuba Hubbard coming out of college he found most of his success on QB draw plays, where it wasn't, QB draw plays essentially where the quarterback kind of like fakes the pass, keeps it, then gives it to the running back, and the running back is kind of like he has more room to run now because he faked the pass, which caused the linebackers to drop. So now Chuba has, and he's kind of like a breakaway speed kind of guy. I think he's got more room to grow, but it's let's look at what the Panthers did with him last Thursday. He was on the field. He saw like a way more snaps than Royce Freeman saw. I thought Freeman would see a lot more. I
think Hubbard is the guy in that backfield. But do you think that this does anything for Robbie Anderson's target share? I know he's really taken a hit compared to last year with Christian McCaffrey coming and taking those short intermediate passes.
I don't think so. I mean, DJ Moore, regardless, like DJ Moore saw 12 targets. Like,
yeah, man,
that's a pretty consolidated target volume. I mean,
I agree.
It's DJ Moore's just getting open. I mean, he's better. He should have been getting more targets than Rob. Yeah, he's just better than
I know
Robbie
a lot
Anderson.
of people were burned by him last year, kind of taking a shot on him as a lower wide receiver 1 last year. It didn't happen. And I think that people this year still are remembering that and not buying into the narrative of DJ Moore ascending into that kind of top 10, top 12 class. But he's looking good, man. He's a post-hype sleeper this year, and I think a lot of people are going to regret not giving him a second chance.
This guy.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I had him all over the place last year, and this year I was like, not falling for that again. And he was going at a considerable value versus last year. And I still passed on him, and I think a lot of people are feeling that way. But such is life, man.
So I see you're a Bears fan.
I am. I'm a huge Bears fan.
I picked the Bears fan to win outright over the Browns this weekend.
This is why we're friends, and this is why you're on my show now.
The Browns are 7-point favorites. I don't get it. I mean, they're at home. They're at home. Fine, whatever. But I think that line has a lot to do with that they're at home. And
the rookie QB coming in.
They nearly lost a game to the Houston Texans. In week 1, in week 2, it was a mobile quarterback. Tyrod Taylor was a mobile quarterback. They couldn't get to him. They lost to a guy with the receiving weapons. Danny Amendola, Brandon Cooks is great, but I mean, like outside of Cooks, there was really nobody to be worried about. And they were struggling. He was driving down the field the entire time. I mean, Justin Fields can easily do the same thing. They have a better running back, better
in the Browns'
receivers.
Defense, the Texans were undefeated at the time. So
yeah. They're lucky. Dude, poor Tyrod, man. I think Justin Fields. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely taking the Bears and the points on this one. If anything,
Same.
I'm definitely. It's not going to be a 7 whole touchdown if the Browns win the game. So I believe the Bears are going to outright win it, and I believe the Bengals are going to outright win against the Steelers as well.
Wow, that's a bold take that I don't think I disagree with, man. I think it's time for the Steelers. We're seeing the fall of Rome, but. As far as the Bears go, I was beating the drum pretty hard on this show last week to go get Fields and go get Darnell Mooney ahead of their matchup with the Bengals last week because I didn't predict Andy Dalton getting hurt, but I thought that there was a world where Dalton could not get it done against the Bengals. And that's when I thought that we'd probably see a change to Fields. And I just love Fields as a deep ball passer. I love Mooney as a deep ball receiver. And I think he's going to do a lot for the receiving game in Chicago. So hopefully you followed our advice and went and got those guys this past week. Not because my process was correct necessarily, but because the results were. Andy Dalton is out. Fields is in. I think the arrow is going to go up for Mooney. I love him as a talent. Fields, I think, is special. Trying not to just be a homer, but I call it like I see it, man. I've spent my entire life bashing Bears quarterbacks, and this is the year that I'm excited.
Well,
so
deservedly so. And Nagy needs to go.
I'm
sorry,
God, dude, don't even get me started.
I'm not going to get started. I'm sorry. Okay, let me ask you another question. Are there any in fantasy? I'm sorry. In fantasy, are there any players that you're looking to get before waivers come that you have a feeling you've been eyeballing on your waiver wire? You're like, okay, this guy, I feel like I should add him. Where can I make room for him? Is there anybody in it? Like, I'll give you an example. One guy for me is Michael Carter. I think
that's a good one.
He had a 50-50 split with Ty Johnson last week. He had the receptions. He looked better. Michael Carter is a better running back than Ty Johnson. Two different running backs. Ty Johnson's your power back, but Michael Carter has the tools to be successful. He has the tools to be adaptable to offensive line that is without Mekhi Becton. He can be successful in the passing game, but he's also shifty. He's got elusiveness. I also believe that Tevin Coleman also inactive because of non-COVID sickness.
Illness, yeah. I saw that. I think that's a great pick. My answer might not be deep enough. He might not still be on waivers, but Michael Pittman, I think a lot of people got scared off because of the Carson Wentz injury.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I believe that the Wentz injury is going to be long enough to make Pittman irrelevant and droppable. And I also don't even know if Wentz is going to miss any time. But if he does, I think there's a world where Pittman is still involved enough to be worth an ad. So if people in your league got scared by the quarterback news and dropped him, go get Pittman. I think he's still in line for a breakout this year. We do at the 56-minute mark here have our first caller of the show on the line, so I'm going to bring them in and see what they have to say. They're coming in now. Hey, caller, you are on the line. Welcome to Fantasy Fan Line. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Greg. It's Joe from Boston. How you doing, Zara? Great show so far. R.I.P. To
Tags. Welcome back, Joe. Good to have you back again, man.
To the Tags. Yeah, R.I.P. to Tags. And so last week, let me get right into it.
Shoot.
Last week I asked you between Kirk and Rondale Moore. We all agreed Kirk was the play last week, but Rondale boomed a bit.
Yes, he did.
Okay, so I'm going to just start them both this week. I'm in a deep league, so this is my who do I start this week?
Okay.
Sterling Shepard or James Robinson? I'm going to hang up and listen to your guys' answer, but you mentioned something about Michael Carter. He's nasty. He reminds me of this year's Myles Gaskin. I missed out on him, and I took Ruggs in the waiver this week. But let me know what you think. Nice. I got James Robinson or Sterling Shepard. I'm going to hang up and listen. Have a good one, guys. Good luck.
Can I ask you a question? Did you leave? Oh, okay. I want to know if it was PPR or not.
I think we lost him. I'm going to assume PPR.
It's probably some kind of PPR format.
Yeah, at least half. No, you can go first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of I'd rather go Sterling Shepard on this. I feel like that James Robinson's production won't be too great in his game where they're probably just going to get outright obliterated, and James Robinson won't really be a factor in rushing attempts. If you want to bet on him to go for some, I know he had 3 targets and 3 receptions last week for, I believe, like 26 yards, I think. You don't really want something like that's going to be a very, very, very low floor for you. You want to maximize production. Sterling Shepard has looked really good this year. You see some good chemistry between he and Daniel Jones. I think the scoring affair between them and the Atlanta Falcons are going to be great. Devontae Smith had a good week against them last week in week 1. Jalen Reagor had a good week against them in week 1. Who did they play last week? They played the Bucs. Obviously, all the Bucs receivers went off against them. The Falcons do not have a defense to worry about. If you're considering playing a wide receiver against them, I'd opt heavily to go with Sterling Shepard in this between he and James Robinson.
Yep, that is my answer as well. I think it's I don't think it's even close. As soon as you said Sterling Shepard, or I was pretty sure I was going to answer Sterling Shepard regardless of who you said next. I love him against the Falcons. I don't think the first 2 weeks are a fluke. I think he's legit. Kenny Galladay's banged up. He's got hip problems right now. And I think that there's maybe concern of him maybe missing time again. I don't know about this week, but maybe in the near future. Galladay has a recent history of hip issues. And even with Galladay on the field, Shepard has been a beast over there. And I don't think that slows down against a bad defense, certainly a bad secondary in a game where the Atlanta offense could get right against the Giants and it could be a shootout. So a lot of opportunity for points. Robinson is somebody who I was scared off of after week one. As much as Mike Williams was the guy who I bought on his week one narrative, James Robinson was the inverse of the guy who I sold off of the week one changes in role and usage. I just don't think that you can rely on him for the kind of volume that you're going to need to start him over a guy like Sterling Shepard, whose upside is through the roof right now. So appreciate the question. Appreciate the call, as always. Sorry about the Christian Kirk question last week, but I stand by the process, and I still feel like Kirk is a great start this week. It's going to be somebody in Arizona every week. I think Rondale Moore gets more involved as the season goes on, but I think they're both flex worthy right now. I think either of them could find the end zone this week.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I think James Robinson is still a hold too, by the way. Just see what happens, at least midway of the season. If you can hold on to him, if you can afford the roster spot on the bench, hold. See what happens. Don't drop him for sure. When I say I was selling him after week one, I meant if you could still find somebody who would buy him on the name as kind of a low RB2. Joe, you said on the phone that you thought that maybe Michael Carter was this year's James Robinson. I hope you meant 2020 James Robinson. Oh, did he say Myles Gaskin, or I think he said Myles Gaskin?
Oh, maybe he did say Myles Gaskin.
Yeah.
Either way, hopefully 2020.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. Appreciate it, Joe. We'll leave the line open for another couple minutes, Zareh, if you have time to stay another few minutes.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I hope we get like 100 more callers. I'll stay here for everybody. Whoever wants.
I usually have a little more time to do kind of promotion for the show with the episode and the guest coming up. Obviously, that wasn't the case this week with the late change in the guest. I kind of knew a couple days ago that there might be an issue, but it wasn't really confirmed until late last night, early this morning. So, we're getting through it as best we can today, and just having fun, shooting the breeze, talking some fantasy.
I'm one of the best bench. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. After you, man.
I was gonna say I'm one of the best bench fantasy analysts there are, because there was another show that needed somebody to come on like at 11 o'clock. They were doing a marathon. They're like, "Yo, Zeke, can you come on?" And I was like, "Yep, I'm just having a bottle of wine." I was just drinking some wine, like watching. I forgot I was watching. I think I was watching like a Clint Eastwood film. I was like, "Yep, I'll be right upstairs." And I came up with a bottle of wine on stream. I was like, "What can I help you with, guys?" So
that's so funny, man. I hope you know that goes both ways. If you ever need a favor from me or a last second pinch hit, I'm usually around, man. I'm working from home these days, as I'm sure a lot of people are. So whether or not I'm working or relaxing, I'm usually in front of this computer, sitting in this spot 5 feet from my Bears blanket backdrop anyway. So I'm ready to go at a moment's notice, man. You just say the word and I'll tag myself in.
Gotcha.
Let's look a little bit, kind of getting back to the Giants, just because they just played the other day against the Washington football team. Is that true? No, that was last week's Thursday game. Hold on a second. I have the wrong link here. That game, by the way, was so much better than it had any business being. This week was Panthers versus Texans, which is kind of the first Thursday night game this year that kind of pooped the bed, I think, in terms of entertainment. Dude, Sam Darnold is looking like a new man, as most people do once they leave Adam Gase.
Right.
How real is that? Is it a mirage? Darnold has had okay stretches before, but nothing really like this. He came out and he threw for over 300 yards against Houston the other day. What do you think of Darnold moving forward?
I'm not really a believer yet, man. I'm just really not a believer yet. Yeah, he looks better. Obviously, he's got better weapons. He's got a way better coach. Just a better overall team. He's got a defense that he can rely on to keep his offense in the game. He still showed shades of old Darnold. He's got some old bad habits to work out. His pocket presence. He had that one fumble in the pocket.
Yeah, that was.
So I'm still not buying him. I mean, I have him as a QB2 in one of my dynasty leagues. So I mean, he's a QB2 for me. But yeah, let's see where. I mean, again, young in the season. Let's see where he goes. Davis Mills, I feel bad for that kid. He needs more time. He should not be out there. They should get anybody in there. They should bring in Cam. You're gonna ruin Davis Mills. Like, he just needs time. He'll be a good quarterback. Just give him time.
He was not in a position to succeed. Obviously, Houston
Yeah.
didn't intend that, but they kind of had to do what they had to do, I guess, on short notice. And
he looked.
Yeah,
He looked bad in the pocket,
168
man.
yards, 1 touchdown. I think you could probably expect more of the same if he's their starter. The Panthers defense is looking especially good this year, and they were one of my favorite plays coming into the week for obvious reasons. But I don't want to take any credit away from the Panthers, but that Texans offense is in shambles right now. Mark Ingram 6 for 21 on the ground. David Johnson 2 for 11. I hope you're one of those people who kind of kept a finger on the pulse in the offseason of the running game in Houston and did not take the shot on David Johnson, because I feel like there was an industry consensus at one point early in the offseason that he was going to be the guy over there. And I think that people paying attention to the moves that they were making on their depth chart had cause for concern, and we are seeing that bear to fruition right now. Brandon Cooks, on the other hand, 9 catches for 112 yards. He does not care who is throwing him the football and what state he's playing, on what team, with what uniform. All he does is produce. He's in that club with Terry McLaurin right now, who's just catching passes from whoever throws it to them and looking great. What do you make of Brandon Cooks?
I love him, man. I mean, they're just daring whatever quarterback is there to throw him the ball, because they know that the Houston Texans don't have full confidence in their quarterback as a passer. So they know that the Texans are going to try to run the ball, which is why the run game did next to nothing last Thursday. So they're going to say, go ahead and throw it. The quarterback's obviously going to have to throw it. Obviously, in negative game scripts. Obviously, down more than 2 scores probably by the fourth quarter. So Brandon Cooks is awesome. He's going to put up wide receiver 2 value, whether you like it. Again, it's going to be a gross situation. And it's not going to be sexy to watch. You're going to want to turn away from it and just look at your phone. When the game's over, you're like, oh my God, I got 16 points from Brandon Cooks. What happened?
Don't know how or when it happened, but it happened, and that's what's important.
Just take the points. I mean, I didn't want any Brandon Cooks because I want to watch my football games. I want to watch all my players play. If you don't want to watch your players play, then have Brandon Cooks on your team and get the points and probably come out victorious in your matchups. But
I don't think that there was enough alcohol in the store around the corner from my house to help me draft a Texans player this year. But maybe that's a miss on my part. And that was somebody I was willing to be wrong about and live with it. And Brandon Cooks right now looks like I was wrong about him, and that's good. I'm happy for him. Happy that team has something going for it. But do I regret passing on him? Probably not. If you have him and you're thinking about selling high, again, I wouldn't do it. I don't think that you're going to get the right value for him just because of the team that he's on, and still kind of the general hesitancy about him and how real it is. I think it's real enough that you should not sell him at this value. I think you should just keep him and enjoy it.
Can I ask you a question?
Shoot.
How do you feel about Alvin Kamara going into the rest of the season?
He's another guy who I've been burned for doubting in the past. I think that he's just too good to ignore the talent, and I think that he has the potential to produce in any situation. I still have him as kind of a top 4 guy. I think that he's going to find a way to get the production, whether it's on the ground or through the air, and a bad game script, a good game script. You probably have a better insight than I do right now on kind of his usage trends as far as game script goes. I don't know if you have an episode ahead for him for running backs versus game scripts.
I don't, but I just know that I know that he's getting heaps of snaps. He's getting heavy volume of snaps. He's seeing the field a lot.
Yep.
I think teams are approaching the Saints as they are the Texans. We're gonna just stuff the box. Go ahead and throw it. I dare you to throw it. Go ahead, Jameis. Go ahead. If Jameis has really changed as a passer, then they'll be all right. But they don't have the weapons.
I don't think I would play, if I'm a defense, I don't think I play that same game of chicken with Jameis as I do with Davis Mills. Right. I think that there's a very different range of outcomes between those two. I still love Kamara. I think that if you have a Kamara manager in your league right now who is panicking, go get him for as cheap as you can. But I will not throw in the towel on Kamara this early in the season. I think that he's still going to burn all of his doubters this season, just like he always seems to every year with people's concerns about his they were never really concerned about the potency of the offense with Drew Brees there, but concerns about his usage, about his carry count, him splitting the backfield with Latavius Murray in past years. And he always found a way to do it anyway. It just reminds me so much of like a Jamal Charles from years past where he would just not get a ton of touches.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And still find a way to be in that kind of top 3, top 4 range every season. So
if they just game plan for him and create a bunch of plays for him, he's so talented that he can be successful in that.
That's exactly it, man. He's one of those guys on the short list of players in the league who I'm going to bet on their talent. Regardless of the situation, he's going to find a way to make it happen. And he does have some obstacles to deal with, but again, I will take Kamara over the field in this case.
I like it.
Yeah.
I was scared. You convinced me.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it, man. I hope you're not in a situation where you have him and you're trying to figure out what to do with him.
I have nowhere.
As far as you're giving advice to other people, I'd say ride it out. He's going to be fine. I'm going to touch on a couple of other final pieces of news here that I've seen get a lot of conversation over the past couple of days. Odell Beckham Jr. is expected to play Sunday against a tough Bears defense. Like you said earlier, no Jarvis Landry. It has been a while since we've seen Beckham on the field. What are your expectations for him this week and I guess moving forward? I think he was drafted with tempered expectations as kind of a wide receiver 3, maybe even flex guy, depending on your league and you know what kind of people you're playing with. But what do you think of Beckham this week?
This week, I'm not trusting him. I feel like he's more being thrust into onto the field because they really have nobody else at the position right now. Mm-hmm. Without him, I think, without him, they don't have any weapons to throw to. They have a bunch of tight ends. I think if he comes out of this game feeling good, he will get. That's what we want first. We want to see him come out of the game feeling good. We don't want to see him limping off the field or walking off the sideline, rubbing his knee or anything like that. We don't want to see him like being attentive to that kind of pain. So we want to see him walk. We want to see him just come off the field, come out of the game clean. And if he looks good, last year about like week 5 or 6, he really kind of popped off before tearing his ACL, or what was ACL, right? His ACL. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have him as a general knee injury here, but I'm pretty sure it was an ACL.
It was the ACL injury, right? So let's kind of fade him this week. I'm playing him at the Scott Fish Bowl because I have Michael Thomas, I have Deontay Johnson. I'm just eviscerated at the wide receiver position, so I have to play him. No, I don't think anybody has to play Odell Beckham unless you're in the deepest of leagues. So if
you're in a deep league and you're dealing with injuries, maybe. I'm a Bears fan, and I think the Bears have a tough defense, but if there's one area where they looked vulnerable so far this year, it is big plays in the passing game. I mean, obviously, Matthew Stafford week 1 with the Rams came out and threw over their heads a couple of times and caught us with our pants down. But all of the short to intermediary stuff has been pretty well covered in Chicago. The run game has been tough sledding there against their defense. Beckham, there's a world where he pops for a couple of big plays and is kind of the shining spot in that passing game. But that injury situation there with him in Cleveland has just been weird, man. Hasn't really been passing the vibe check. I can't get a beat on how bad it actually was or if there's drama with the team, which is not something that I would like to assume, but there have just been conflicting reports about the severity of his injury at this point and whether or not he was ready to go in week 1, leading into week 1. I think that there were beat reporters who expected him to play, and he was a surprise inactive, and obviously he missed again week 2, so how bad is it? How bad is it not? Is there an issue with the team? But he's coming in this week. Again, like you said, there's nobody else. So, I think don't go out of your way to avoid playing him if you don't have any other options with upside. I think Beckham at least has upside, but I would not count on him as like a wide receiver 3. If you have a flex spot, throw him in, hope for the best.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you can let him go off on your bench, let him go off on your bench. I don't think you'll have any really real regrets about it. No,
because worst case scenario, now you got a receiver who looks good again and hopefully will be involved moving forward, and you just missed him for a week, and that's something you need to be willing to live with.
I want to go back to your Bears again real quick because David Montgomery, what the hell? He looks amazing. What happened? I mean, for like last year, I was like, no. First year, I was like, no, thank you. He looks so slow. Like he looked so like his processing was there when he was reading the line, when he was reading the holes, but he just wasn't fast enough to get to it. Yep. And he still had some mental errors. His second year, he kind of put it together a little bit more. Dude, last week I saw him take a catch from Dalton and run up the sideline, and I've never seen him run that fast in my entire life, man. Like he looks
that was a pretty play.
So good.
He has grown a lot as a player, and I think that he made a bad first impression with the fantasy community his first year. I think that there were a lot of expectations just because of the workload that he was coming into. It was a decent offense. He was expected to get a lot of volume, and he did, and he didn't do anything with it. And that's always hard to watch. It's kind of the stink of like the first year of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who different situations, he was obviously in a much better offense, but he was going to be the guy, and he was the guy, and he got a lot of carries, and he wasn't the top 10, top 12 guy that people were kind of hoping for when they grabbed him. So he came in the last year with some stink on him, deservedly so. And he was useless for the first half of the season, and then he was a monster for the second half of the season. And I think that he turned a corner as a player. I don't think that it is as much about the Tariq Cohen injury or the situational stuff as you might be led to believe. I saw a big ranking discrepancy coming into this season with him, and I noted this on an earlier show. Anybody who's listening to this who heard us in the offseason remembers I talked about how David Montgomery's ADP coming into this season was lower than the point where it was midway through last season, where he was kind of considered to be a bust for the first half. He was still outperforming at that point the ADP where he was being drafted this year, and I thought that was ridiculous. He was right. I don't have those numbers handy, but he was going like, I don't know, 20, 21 this year in the running back rankings, and he was something like the RB 17 by the halfway point of last year. And obviously over the second half he was like top 5, top 3.
Okay, so look at the back half of this year's first round running backs. Ezekiel Elliott, Nick Chubb. I think Antonio Gibson might have been going there. JT. I think David Montgomery is going to be going in front of all those guys next year. I think. Yeah, I think so too. He's more involved in the passing game on early downs too. Like he's always been a good receiver. Even in year one, he was a good receiver. So I think he's going to be going with Justin Fields. He'll be going as a first round running back, still in the back half probably, but a first round running back next year in fantasy drafts.
It takes a lot for running backs who aren't branded necessarily as a pass-catching running back. Like I think Antonio Gibson was, even if it's not playing out this year. I think that he had that brand to him as being a 3-down guy. I think it takes a lot for running backs who don't have that reputation to be considered a top 10, top 12 running back on a bad offense. I think that you have to check all those boxes in order to kind of get into that club as far as ADP goes or expert ranking goes. But I think when Fields comes in, and if he turns the offense around the way that we expect and uses Montgomery more in the passing game, I think Tariq Cohen's washed, unfortunately.
Dude, Justin Fields is gonna go off this year. They're gonna beat the Browns tomorrow. They're gonna beat the Browns tomorrow. I'm not even hesitant about saying it. Like I'm not.
Zod, I need to have you on the show every week.
I'm not trying to be bold, man. It's just like how. I mean, like, come on, man. Like, dude, they almost lost to the Texans, dude. They're dying. They were dying against the Texans. Like,
listen, man, anytime you want to come on my show and tell me how great the Bears are about to be, you are welcome to join us any week, any matchup.
My friend Brian Restivo, another one of your Italian brethren, he's a huge Bears.
Represent.
He's a big Cubbies and Bears fan.
Excellent.
I'm always talking shit to him about the Bears. Sorry if I can cuss. I don't know.
Oh, but, please, that's fine.
No, but he is too. I'm always commiserating with him about the Bears. Every time they make a move in the offseason, we're always just like, what are they doing? What are they doing? Like, what are they doing with Dalton? But
you're only allowed to cuss on this show in relation to Chicago sports teams.
The Chicago Bears.
All out.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'll take it.
Yeah, sure. No, I think Montgomery is great. I think that I don't know if we'll see a huge difference in his production from this year to next, but I do think that we'll see a huge difference in the perception of his potential next year after a full season under Fields. I think people will feel a lot better about the offense. We'll see what happens with Allen Robinson in the offseason. And I think that's going to depend a lot on the growth of Darnell Mooney over the course of this season, right? And how willing the Bears are to let him kind of take the number one role there. But a lot of optimism in Chicago. I think that people who are really paying attention to Montgomery's growth over the course of last season, we're probably buying him on the cheap this year and feeling great about it coming into the season. And congratulations to all of you, all of us, because I am included in that group, who got him at a discount. I think he's a monster.
Greg, you're very good at this job. You were made for this. You're made for fantasy analyst. You're very, very, you're so great, dude. I love watching you talk and listening to you speak. You're so much more like, you're just so eloquent and you're well thought out. And I'm so spastic all over the place. And I wish I could talk. I wish I could speak like you and have the thought process like you did at this. I feel like you're going to really go places in this, man. So, I mean,
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, dude. I am maybe 4 or 5 weeks into doing this. I can't thank enough all the people who agreed to come on this show without ever having seen it done before. Not just my show specifically, but this format has never really been tried, I think. And, it just speaks to the bravery and kind of the support of this community. I could have been anybody, man. People agreeing to come on this show, I could have been a crazy person, but I appreciate your words of support, man. That means a lot. And you know what I think of you as a content creator and as a host, and I think that you're one of the better spoken people in the community. So that's really kind coming from you, man. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, you're definitely not the crazy. You're inviting the crazies onto your show. You're not the crazy one. We're the crazy ones.
Dude, crazy sells tickets, man. I'm glad to have all of you on here. It brings the eyeballs. It drives the views. Let's take one last piece of news here that I think is worth discussing. Antonio Brown was placed on the reserve COVID-19 list. There's a good chance he doesn't play. I would say probably almost definitely at this point, unless I missed any news today. Yeah. What does this mean for the other receiving options in Tampa Bay against the Rams? Obviously one of the toughest defenses out there, but is it more targets for Mike Evans, for Chris Godwin? Do you take a dart throw at Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson? What does it all mean, man?
Yeah, no, I really wouldn't mess with those the tertiary wide receivers.
I just finished complimenting you on how well spoken you are.
Just edit it. Just edit it. Voice over it.
I'll cut that out later. I'll beep it.
English is not easy, dude. People struggle with English all the time. Anyways, no, I wouldn't really be looking to the third option at wide receiver. Not Scotty Miller. Forget about all that. Unless you're in deep leagues, fine. Take a dart throw on whoever it may be. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm not going to lie to you and act like I know. It's going to be target consolidation for Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, and Mike Evans. I was contemplating OJ Howard, but Bruce Arians loves to torment OJ Howard, so we're not. I really doubt we're going to see any of that.
That's maybe one of his favorite pastimes. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can play him as the ultra contrarian player of the year on DFS if you're feeling brave. Yeah, I really wouldn't mess with anybody else on that Bucs offense. I think it's going to be pure Evans and Godwin, and more so Godwin.
Agreed, man. Unless you're looking for a glory play to hold over your friend's head for beating them with them in your lineup this week, I would stay away from those other guys. I think it's going to be the Gronk show and the top two wide receivers there. Speaking of Gronk, man, welcome back. Like what? I don't know what happened this season, but he is looking Gronkian from the days of old. And just on the eyeball test, he looks good. He doesn't look like young Gronk, but he looks like top 5, top 6 Gronk. And I wasn't expecting it. He was another guy who I passed on this year without a second thought. Just a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. Gronk is older. And I think that I was so ingrained in my take on him last year where he was out of the league for a little bit. And I'm like, it's harder than it seems to come back in cold and play on a Super Bowl winning offense. But I have been proven wrong. Gronk looks great. And I think that I like him the rest of the season, maybe over Mark Andrews.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big name that we talked about last week in terms of kind of getting a check on the panic meter. Somebody called in and asked how we felt about Mark Andrews, and I'm not panicking on Mark Andrews just because this is kind of in line with my expectations for him this year. He was never going to be like a big guy who was involved in the passing game. He wasn't going to be like the 10, 12, 19 Darren Waller targets, but nobody's really on that level. He's the guy who's going to catch a couple passes, and some games he's going to catch like 3 touchdowns, and some games he's not going to do anything. So,
can I do a little bit of Mark Andrews name game with you?
Please do.
Okay. Mark Andrews or Noah Fant?
This season, like rest of the season, not talking Dynasty. It is Noah Fant for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I've risen on him a lot over the course of this year. I was full out on him coming into the offseason when it was the Drew Lock show based on last year's Drew Lock. And as soon as I saw Drew Lock looking good, and as soon as I saw Teddy Bridgewater beat him, I was like, okay, I'm back in, especially with with less weapons over there now. I think Noah Fant's going to get his. So
okay, absolutely, I agree. Okay, Mark Andrews or Robert Tonyan?
Andrews.
Okay. All right, cool. Then I'll stop right there. I was going to say Mark Andrews or Jonnu Smith, but I'm assuming you're going to go Andrews there too.
I am going to go Andrews there. I still like that pass game in Baltimore. It is not going to be high volume, but it's going to be efficient. I'm waiting to see if they're going to have to lean on it a little more than they usually like to, just because of the injuries in the running game there. Baltimore has led the league in rush attempts the past 3 years straight. I don't know if that continues. We'll see how much of that was the system and how much of that was just really liking their personnel If we see it happen again this year, I think we know it's going to happen no matter what for the rest of time.
Yeah.
But go ahead. No,
I just don't have faith that they're going to open up the passing game at all.
Yeah, I don't think that they open it, but I think maybe they need to lean on it maybe more in the short red zone game, the 5-10 yard line. I think Andrews maybe gets a couple of extra targets that otherwise would have gone to the running backs had they had running backs left to give them to. So,
Sure.
Andrew
has been seeing 81 to 75% snap shares in the first 2 weeks.
Wow,
that's great.
Yeah,
that's fine.
As far as Tonyan goes, it's hard for me to say nice things about the Packers as a Bears fan without my skin like bursting into flames.
That's right.
I think I signed a contractual agreement at some point when I became a Bears fan to never compliment them on my show. But I can not say not bad things about them. I think that there's probably a tier of middling tight ends who you are relying on to catch touchdowns. Mark Andrews is one of those guys who I think is going to succeed more often than not. And I think Tonyan is too, because that's just what Rodgers does, man. People look at those efficiency numbers from last season and the touchdown rate compared to how many receptions he caught. And they're like, well, there's no way he could possibly do that again. But freaking Aaron Rodgers, man, just the bane of my existence, ruins my life every year. He comes out and he does these things that people don't understand how he does them. But I think that if there's one guy you're going to rely on for consistently high touchdown production, it's Aaron Rodgers and his receiving weapons, unfortunately.
Here he comes for the NFC North again. Here we go again.
Dude, it's been such a roller coaster between thinking he was going to change teams in the offseason and then seeing Fields come to Chicago. I was like, everything's coming up Bears.
But as a Bears fan, wouldn't you want to take the NFC North with Aaron Rodgers still there? Wouldn't it feel a lot better not just to have, we won the NFC North, yeah, but Rodgers
in a perfect world, yes, but I think anybody who's been a Chicago fan for long enough at this point will take it however they can get it. If that means Rodgers riding off into the sunset, disgraced and on a ugly breakup from Green Bay, maybe going to Denver, maybe retiring, going to Jeopardy, I will be there laughing all along the way. But that's not what happened. He is back. He's going to throw a bunch more touchdowns. I was so happy week 1 when they got shellacked by the Saints. Dude, so I don't know sometimes if I love the Bears more than I hate the Packers or vice versa, but I feel like it's a symbiotic relationship. And my wife walked in on me sitting right there when the Packers were playing the Saints, and she came in right after Rodgers threw a really ugly pick, and I was just cackling like a 5-year-old. And she was like, "You need help." And I was like, "I know." It just brings me so much joy to watch him fail. But last week was a return to normalcy.
It's like the Bears are playing, but you're watching Rodgers throw play miserably. You're not even watching the Bears game. You're just watching Rodgers be miserable.
That's a me problem. It is a me problem that I find more joy in the failure of my enemies than the success of my allies. But it's something I'm working on.
I love watching Rodgers like get into a hissy fit and like just the camera always goes to him because everybody knows in the production booth that he's gonna be like, dude, go this way, like just yelling at everybody and not owning everything and just snapping his helmet off and rolling his eyes.
Yeah, there was a highlight reel from that week 1 game of just nasty sacks and picks and things against the Packers and Rodgers throwing a tantrum on the sideline. They fit it all into about a 45-second hit on ESPN, and I grabbed it and I had it just running on my TV monitor for a couple of days after that. And I just looked at it when I was having like a hard day at work and I needed something to cheer me up. I was like, there it is. That's what it's all about.
Is this your Bears cave here? Is this your bear cave?
It is, man. My webcam is strapped pretty hard to the monitor, else I'd give you a tour. But there is, I'm not ashamed to say, there's a signed Jay Cutler jersey sitting about 15 feet away from me. Thank you. It was probably the cheapest signed anything I've ever bought off of eBay. Dirt cheap after he retired. But I got a Brandon Marshall football sitting behind my bar over there.
Wow.
This is the Bears cave, man.
Wow.
Yeah, Forte's probably next on my list, but I'll go find something for him to add to my collection.
Absolutely.
That'll be my gift to myself. Dude, we're at about an hour and a half. This has just been so much fun. I think I'm going to wrap things up unless you have any really last significant storylines to keep an eye on heading into this week. Or
what is there, man? I didn't
think of anything. News, questions.
I think this is going to be the week for Ayuk.
Oh, I hope so, man. You think that was a temporary setback, or is he Dante Pettis 2.0?
You can't. I mean, like, they're going to play the Packers. I mean, unless Kyle Shanahan, like, I know Kyle Shanahan has kind of had their number in seasons past, but I believe that, I mean, Rodgers is just going to they're still down 2 corners. They're still down Emmanuel Mosley. I don't know if he's going to play this year, and Jason Verrett, obviously. And, Josh Norman's not going to get the job done back there. So expect the Packers to be ahead. You can't beat the Niners and try to keep up with the Packers with Trent Sherfield on the opposite side of the field. Trent Sherfield is fine. Get a great pack. I was touting Trent Sherfield in the offseason, but you're in need Ayuk to play. You're in need a player of Ayuk's caliber to play. Ayuk just doesn't play well his rookie season and become worse his offseason for I don't see what reality that is.
You would think.
Also, right? I mean, I'm, shame on me, I guess, for thinking, so linearly.
Applying the logical process to the analysis of the player. Yeah.
Exactly.
What were you thinking?
And Trey Sermon, dude. Trey Sermon this week. It's time.
It's
time. Let's go.
Here's what I'll say about both of those players who have been infinitely frustrating over the last few weeks. I think that if it's going to happen for them this year, this is the week it's going to happen. I'm not going to full on 100% say that this is the week for both of those guys, but if it's going to happen, this is the week. That's the condition that I'll put on it. I love Ayuk as a talent. If the last 2 weeks were not injury related, which I think that they were, but if they weren't, I don't understand what's happening. Right. And I'm willing to accept the fact that I'm not always going to understand what's happening in Shanahan's head. I think that that's part of the risk that you sign up for when you draft his players. But you should know that going into it. You know what you're buying. I think that they were kind of sold at a discounted rate just because of that anyway. There's always a lot of mouths to feed there. There's never one guy except for George Kittle, who's ironically not looking like the one guy. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard for me to buy any weapons in Shanahan's offense. Every year I come in saying that, and then I do it anyway, and I kick myself for it. But I did pick up Trey Sermon off waivers this week. I saw him dropped in a lot of places. There was a question that I answered before you came on that I want to quickly circle back to. Sam in New Jersey asked, is it worth stashing Trey Lance right now?
Oh, yeah.
Get your take on this, and then we'll wrap things up.
It's coming. It's coming. Yeah. Especially if the rest of the NFC West wins all their games this week and goes up a game. And, Jimmy G loses a game against the Packers. Yeah, you can't afford to fall behind a game in this division. So expect Trey Lance to come out. Jimmy G's, the Packers defense isn't the best, but Jimmy G can lose the game by himself, defense or not. So, I mean, we have 2 weeks of film. We know that he likes to go to Deebo Samuel a lot. It's either going to be Killer Samuel. Either way, I don't see Jimmy G keeping up with the Packers. He just doesn't have that kind of level of play for an entire game to beat the Packers. Whatever happens is Trey Lance is going to be incorporated into this game, I think, a lot more too as this game goes along.
I think maybe Jimmy G was good enough to not make mistakes and lean on the run game to beat a team like the Packers, which you kind of have to do against them. You have to keep the ball away from Rodgers, lean on your run game. But that offense, that backfield is so decimated right now. I don't know what that's going to look like. And I think they're going to have to lean on Jimmy G to keep up, and I don't think he can do it. So I agree with you there, man. To this point, he hasn't really given them a reason to bench him and make a quarterback change, but this could be it. So my full answer to that question earlier was I think it really depends on your format. If you're in a league with a shallow bench and one quarterback and you really need the depth at one of the positional spots, probably not. He's probably not somebody I would prioritize. But if you are in a situation with a deeper bench, even in one quarterback leagues, if your starter is somebody that you're kind of on the fence about, if you have a Ryan Tannehill or a Daniel Jones and not someone you spent, a top 5, top 6 round pick on, like a Kyler Murray or a Lamar Jackson, because in that case, I think it's kind of redundant because, you have an elite quarterback, you have Trey Lance behind him. What are you going to do once he hits? You're going to probably try to trade him. And good luck in a one quarterback league, but certainly deeper bench if you need the help at your QB1 spot, or certainly in super flexes. I mean, he should be rostered in every 2 quarterback situation, every super flex league. If he is somehow on your waivers right now, go check. He should not be there. You should do something about that. So that is my parting thought. Z, dude, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for jumping into the last second. I owe you big time. If there's ever anything I can do for you, you say the word. Take a minute and replug all of the stuff you got going on for anybody who might have joined the show and missed your couple of hits about that in the beginning.
Yeah, again, you can find me at the handle on the banner below at ZekeKantzFF on Twitter. Again, I work at PFF as a base data analyst. PFF is one of the best sites I think out there. They have so much useful tools for analyzing, players, snaps by position. They have just a bunch of great stuff. Yards per fantasy, really great group of guys. They all pour their heart into their work. Go follow Yards per fantasy. They all really care about what they do. They're just not putting out, run of the mill stuff. They're really trying to, put their heart in their work. And DynastyNerds, those guys also do a lot of great work. Huge team. They put out work really quickly. When something happens, they're on it. So go follow DynastyNerds. Follow my work at Running Back versus Game Script. You can see the articles published on my Twitter page. I want to say I had a lot of fun on this show too. Support Greg, man. Greg's gonna go places. Like I really like, Greg. I'm a great fantasy football analyst scout. I know how to spot him, man. This guy's got moves.
I don't think I've ever. Oh, look at this. We got a late comment chiming in. Andrew says, "Hey on YouTube." Hey, Andrew.
Hey,
I just wanted to get that in there, but mostly as a way to deflect my embarrassment at that very generous compliment. That's how I take compliments. I bring in comments from YouTube and I deflect. But dude, I appreciate that so much. Anyone out there listening who doesn't already follow Z, follow him, ZekeKantzFF. He already mentioned it. I'm a huge fan and supporter of everybody I bring on this show. There's never a week where I'm going to put somebody in front of you, the listeners, who I don't fully support and believe in as an expert and as an authoritative voice on everything that we're discussing. So, Z, thanks for coming in, man. I hope we get you back on the season later this year once we're a little more settled here. And once again, for anyone who chimed in to just kind of listen to us talk fantasy and remember tags. I don't really have any closing words about Mike Tagliere. I think we've said everything that we're able to say at this point as we continue to process his loss today. Just devastating for the community. And if you find a moment to go visit Fantasy Pros on their social media and visit Mike's wife, Tabby, on Twitter, they can tell you more about the efforts that they're doing right now to kind of support. I think they're doing a fundraising effort for Tags' family. I assume that's what I should look that up properly before I plug that 1 second.
Yeah. And also, like, if you want to, for me tomorrow, like, I'm going to enjoy fantasy, in memory of Tags, because that's what Tags would have wanted us to do. And Tags wanted us to be, good people to each other and just be kind to each other in memory of Tags. Let's treat each other with respect tomorrow. Let's treat each other with respect, forever. But let's, for at least 1 day, for at least 2 days, for a week, let's try in memory of Tags. Let's do that, because that's what he would have wanted us to do. He made fantasy football so much more enjoyable, and I'm going to have as much fun as possible watching fantasy football in remembrance of Mike. I'm going to crack a beer open for him. I'm going to have, everything I do tomorrow is going to be in remembrance of him. I'm not going to feel bad if I win or lose, just because I know he would have wanted us to have fun. So he'll be watching all of us tomorrow as we're watching our games. Hopefully he'll be watching the games too from wherever he's at, man. So we love you, Tags, dude. Like, hope you're okay, man.
Tags is gone, and that's hard, but remember how he made you feel about this game and take that with you as you continue to enjoy it. At Fantasy Pros on Twitter, they have a tweet a couple hours ago, says, "We're raising funds for the Tagliere family. If you'd like to consider helping, please visit the link below." It's a GoFundMe link. So if you find the time and you are able to do so, please consider going to support them and supporting Tags' family. We're all thinking of them right now in this impossible time that we're still kind of wrapping our heads around. Z, thanks again, man. This was the best. I'm going to bring us out here. If anyone's listening to our show for the first time, we are live, Fantasy Fanline, every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for the entire rest of the season. We will be back next weekend again, same time, same place. You can stream us on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, wherever you're watching us right now. You can find us at Fantasy Fanline on all platforms. And every question is released in audio format the day after it airs on your favorite podcast platform. You can visit our website, fantasyfanline.com, for a full schedule of our upcoming guests and to submit a question for our mailbag. And if you like the show, please leave a review, tell a friend. We are brand new. That's how we grow. We are relying on your support. Thanks again to Zeke. Thanks again to you for tuning in and watching and listening and calling. Goodbye.